If you visit your local Toyota showroom looking to buy the most capable off-roader that the company has to offer, you're going to be looking at one of these two. This is the 2020 Tacoma TRD Pro and the 2020 4Runner TRD Pro. Now, both of these trucks received extensive updates for the 2020 model year, some new styling on the outside, a new interior with a new infotainment system, and some new safety features. But what sets them apart from the other TRD models is all of the TRD Pro hardware. You've got an upgraded suspension, upgraded skid plates, upgraded wheels and tires, and these trucks are designed to basically go head-to-head with your buddies Jeep Wranglers. So the big question I want answered, if you guys have roughly $50,000 to spend, should you buy the Tacoma TRD Pro or a 4Runner TRD Pro? That's what we're here to find out. So even though it may not look like the same color, once upon a time this was army green just like the 4Runner, but one of my colleagues decided to go through the mud pit. I promise it wasn't me, so I apologize with the Tacoma being covered in mud. But let's start with underneath the hood, because these two trucks are very different, obviously on the outside, but underneath the hood they're also very different because the Tacoma has a different engine. This is the 3.5 liter V6 with direct and port injection. It technically makes more horsepower than the 4Runner at 278 and 265 pound-feet of torque. Remember, once upon a time, these two trucks shared an engine, they shared a chassis, but this truck was redesigned for 2016 and it moved to this new powertrain. It's paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission or an available 6-speed manual. The Tacoma will tow a maximum of around 7,400 pounds, depending on the trim configuration. It also weighs around 4,500 pounds. Now, in relation to the Tacoma, the 4Runner makes do with an older engine. It's actually the engine I prefer, to be honest. It's a 4-liter double overhead cam V6. This engine has been around since the 4th generation 4Runner came out back in 2003. It makes 270 horsepower, so technically 8 less ponies than this, but it makes 278 pound-feet of torque. So roughly about 13 more pound-feet of torque than this one. So this one to me feels like the quicker truck, but it also makes do with a 5-speed automatic, and it's your only transmission option. Toyota hasn't offered a manual transmission on the 4Runner for years. This one is roughly around the same weight, and this one is also the thirstier option, 1720 versus like 1622 for this one. So remember, the newer, smaller engine gets slightly better gas miles. The 4Runner also will tow less. I'm also noticing a couple of differences. The 4Runner has these struts to hold up the hood, while the Tacoma makes do with a prop rod, which doesn't really surprise me. Most trucks in the segment just deal with a prop rod. Now, once you get past underneath the hood, looking at the front fascia of these two trucks, obviously they're very different. This one's been around since 2010, while this one was refreshed in 2016 or redesigned. They both got updated front ends for 2020. The 4Runner, you can see, has the new Toyota badge spelled out in the grille. It's got the new radar sensor for the adaptive cruise control because this now has Toyota Safety Sense P, but the 4Runner also still makes do with halogen projector headlights. I'm very confused as to why Toyota didn't offer LED headlights. You do have LED fog lights by Rigid Industries, and overall the 4Runner still looks pretty good. You also have this hood scoop here, which is fake, the same deal with the Tacoma's hood scoop. Now, looking at the front end, at least trying to looking at the front end, I want to first talk about the headlights. Excuse me while I wipe the mud off here. I apologize, it's a little hard to see, but once you look past the mud, ew, that's disgusting. Looking at the headlights, you can see Toyota added full LED headlights to the Tacoma for 2020. Basically, you're going to get that on the TRD and up models, the Limited as well. You also have LED fog lights by Rigid Industries, and the grille itself, it looks to be a little bit larger on the Tacoma, although some of you may argue with that. You also have an adaptive cruise control radar sensor right here. Overall, I think they're both handsome looking trucks, but I'm gonna have to give it to the Tacoma because it's got the LED headlight option. Now, another obvious difference between these two trucks is one is actually a pickup truck, while the other one is an SUV, and obviously when you guys look at the pickup truck, this is the bigger vehicle. In general, the Tacoma is about 20 inches longer than the 4Runner, but in relative terms, this is still a relatively small truck. Remember, this is a mid-sized truck. Now, the TRD Pro on the Tacoma comes with 16-inch wheels. These are an updated wheel, which are about 4 pounds lighter versus the pre-refreshed model. You still have roughly around 11 inches of ground clearance. The Tacoma TRD Pro in general has a 1-inch lift. Same thing with the 4Runner. No running boards as well because this car has the Fox shocks. You need to be able to go off-roading in this thing a lot better. That would kind of just get in the way. Now, in contrast, the 4Runner is a mid-size SUV. Its wheelbase at 109 inches long is actually on the smaller side for most of the mid-size class, and it's 190 inches long overall. This is a little bit shorter than something like a Honda Accord or Toyota Camry in overall length. I also like what Toyota gives you on the Pro models. It's got this nice and sturdy roof rack there with the roof basket. It looks a lot better. You can get that, I believe, on the Tacoma, although the Tacoma has that amazing snorkel, which is functional, which you can't get on the 4Runner. So again, very different looking trucks. So in terms of the side profile, it's really gonna come down to whether you prefer a truck or you prefer an SUV. Now, if you wanna follow me over to the back of the 4Runner, the 4Runner does have one up over the Tacoma. It's got LED taillights, which are a combination LED. It's got LED brake lights, incandescent turn signals. The Tacoma has like all incandescent design. And then the rest of the look back here, you have that rear window that still folds down. And because this is an SUV, technically this one gives you more space. Toyota says you get around 48 cubic feet of space with the second row up. Fold them down, you get around 89 cubic feet of space. That is the same as what you get in something like the big Kia Telluride. And remember, the 4Runner still offers a third row, but not on this TRD Pro model. Now moving on to the interior, let me first start with the 2020 4Runner. Now, the door itself, there was something in the door, so it made a little rattle. Let me try that again and get rid of this little rattling sound. You know, for a vehicle that is almost 10 years old, it actually still sounds really solid. Now to start the vehicle up, thank God for 2020, because Toyota has finally added push button start with intelligent access key. Before, you couldn't even get this on a 4Runner. So put your foot on the brake, push the button here to fire up the engine. I know some of you are probably saying, oh, you didn't really need it, but I'm telling you, when you try out a car with that feature, you can't really go back to it. Now, the rest of this dashboard hasn't changed much over the years. Toyota made extensive updates for 2014, but really the biggest change, and you guys who bought the 2018 or 2017 or 2019 model, you're gonna be pissed because Toyota has added Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, Amazon Alexa, and 4G LTE. It's got a wireless hotspot. So all of the modern tech is now in this truck, and it's got a larger 8-inch touchscreen display. All 4Runners will come standard with this 8-inch touchscreen display with the Apple CarPlay. You can see this looks a lot better. And in fact, the dashboard itself is really small, so having this big 8-inch screen here makes it look a lot more modern. It also is very snappy. It works fairly well. This is the iOS 13 update, so you can see here, it shows the new home page. It's very, bright resolution. So I'm pretty pleased with this screen. I'm sorry, you guys who bought the old 4Runner. You're gonna be pretty pissed when you see the 2020 model, and you're probably gonna wanna trade up into this. Now, going into the actual infotainment system, this is of course their Entune 3.0. The GPS hasn't really changed, but it does work a lot better. It's a lot snappier. And I just, in general, like this new interface. It's really easy to reach. When you put the vehicle into reverse, you can see just a traditional backup camera with some parking sensors. So the camera itself could use work. I'm surprised that this one here doesn't have the 360 camera. What the 4Runner does offer are heated and cooled seats. You can get that on the Limited. This particular one only has heated seats, and the seats themselves, they are a 10-way power adjustment. No memory on this one. You have to, again, go for the Limited trim. The rest of this interior, it's got a hard touch dashboard material. It's got this interesting plastic that tries to look like aluminum trim. You have dual zone automatic climate control. You have your USB ports over there, a very traditional lever style for the 4-wheel drive system. And then remember, this has a 5-speed automatic transmission. That's your only transmission option. The door panels are also slightly padded on the top over here. All the windows are one-touch automatic up-down, so that's a nice feature. I'll show you the differences again in the Tacoma. And the steering wheel, as you can see, it tilts and telescopes, but it could offer a little bit more adjustability in terms of the range for the tilt and telescopic steering wheel. So the interior of the 4Runner, while it is obviously an old design, modern infotainment system now really brings us up to date. Push button start and Toyota Safety Sense P. The sunroof on this model, as you can see, is standard, but don't expect to find a panoramic sunroof. It's just not available on this truck. So let's hop into the Tacoma and see the differences in the interior compared to this one. So hopping inside the Tacoma, you can see the dashboard design is completely different because remember, this truck came out a little bit sooner than that truck. And then when you shut the door, it also sounds the same, honestly, as the 4Runner, so it's a relatively solid thunk. Now to start the vehicle up, the Tacoma has offered push-button start in the past, but they updated it with a new sensor on the passenger door this year. This one, as you can see, has the same key as the 4Runner. And the engine itself actually sounds a little bit different because remember, this is a smaller engine. It's a 1/2 liter size, smaller in displacement. Now looking at the rest of this dashboard, they haven't changed too much other than the fact that this 8-inch touchscreen is now new for 2020. It comes standard on every trim except the SR trim, which is the base trim. The SR trim has a smaller 7-inch display but all of them now come standard with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and Amazon Alexa. So again, updated modern features that will really bring the truck into the 21st century. When you put the vehicle into reverse, the Tacoma does offer a 360 camera on the TRD Pro. So that's something to keep in mind if you guys are cross-shopping the two trucks. Obviously it's covered in mud right now, so you can't see crap on it other than just the brown mud, but I promise it's there. Now looking at the rest of this cabin, you can see the steering wheel now has a telescoping adjustment, but the range is a little bit better in the 4Runner. The gauges are slightly different. I actually think I prefer the look of the 4Runner's interior a little bit more. I just like the dashboard. You feel like there's a little bit more space in the 4Runner. The seats, they feel honestly the same to me. The steering wheel also is pretty similar. There are slightly harder touch plastics, but this is a truck versus that one's more like a family SUV, although don't you dare call that a crossover. Now in terms of features, you also have automatic climate control. The Tacoma gives you a more traditional dial here, just a rotary dial to switch it between 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, and 4-low. Your crawl control, all your differential locks are up here, just like on the 4Runner. And then this truck has a 6-speed automatic transmission. In general, it's a much more modern transmission, but it also is down a few gears compared to the competition. Now, unlike the 4Runner, this one also has a wireless phone charger, which is nice. You can't get that on the 4Runner. Cup holders, of course, there's a little bit more cup holders in this car, it looks like. And then the center console here is relatively the same. It's got a good, amount of space in there. And then you find two more USB ports as well, which should help out with.
And you find 2 more USB ports.
And you'll also find 2 more USB ports in there, which will be nice if you guys are looking to charge your phones. So overall, the cabins, obviously they're very different designs, but similar tech features, but I think I may prefer the roominess and just the overall layout that you get in the 4Runner. Now, if you're going to be using these as family vehicles, the back seat of the Tacoma, remember this one is the 4-door model, is on the small side, even for the class of vehicle. Getting back here, you can see I'm 5'7", I'm not very tall, but there is about 34 inches of legroom back here. It is relatively tight. Most Americans who are over 6 feet tall will not find this to be very comfortable, but let's hop into the back seat of the 4Runner and see if it's any different. So if you're trying to sell this to your spouse as the better vehicle, the more practical one, the 4Runner is obviously going to win. Getting back here into the second row, Toyota says there's about 35 inches of legroom, so about an inch more legroom, but there is a almost completely flat floor back here, so getting over to the center seat is really nice. You have rear seat air vents, you have 2 USB ports back here, and the seats themselves, they are relatively comfortable, but you do notice you sit up high. So in the middle seat here, I'm pretty close to the actual ceiling at 5'7". So overall, this is the one that has more back seat room, but again, this is more of a family SUV as opposed to the truck that the Tacoma is. So it's not every day that you get to drive 2 TRD Pro models on an off-road trail that has been set up by the manufacturer of that vehicle. So I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity to show you guys the differences in the drive. Now, obviously they're very different vehicles, as I said. Let's start with the 2020 4Runner TRD Pro. This is the one that is the more expensive option versus the Tacoma. It's about $3,000 more expensive. Obviously you get an SUV. It technically has a little bit more practicality because you could get this thing with a 3rd row, not this particular trim here. But I'm gonna leave it in 2-wheel drive mode here. We're gonna turn off the traction control. So I was gonna do some drifting in it, but Toyota asked us to leave the stability control on, but I'm gonna leave it in 2-wheel drive though, because I wanna see, honestly, for this high-speed run, we don't really need 4-wheel drive. So let's get started here. Now, the TRD Pro includes upgraded suspension, upgraded shocks, and you're really gonna use that out on this when you're going higher speeds on this gravel dirt trail. And the 4Runner, where it is weak out on the road for its like loose steering and bumpy ride, you're gonna notice it is very useful out here. Because the steering, which is really loose, gives you a lot of play. The suspension, which is really soft, offers a lot of cushion when you guys are going through stuff like this. And again, I am in 2-wheel drive. There is no need for 4-wheel drive on this thing. There's the stability control cutting in to keep the back end from stepping out. And it can get in pretty aggressive, but the 4Runner stays very composed. And this is where it really shines a lot. A lot of people really like how secure it feels. It makes you feel safe. Like even in 2-wheel drive, I'm going through this so easily on the The suspension soaks up the bumps. It's got skid plates everywhere. You got plenty of ground clearance. So yeah, this thing is pretty impressive on the high-speed trail. Let's go ahead and do another trail, because Toyota has a couple of trails here. But yeah, I mean, the bumpy ride that you get out on the road, put it out here on a high-speed, you know, dirt road, and the 4Runner really shines. For a car that's this old, this thing is still really impressive. Now I'm approaching another course here. This is the purple course. So this one is designed to kind of go through this little trail where you go up some hills, you get some wheel articulation. And I'm gonna still leave it in two-wheel drive here because I think the 4Runner can get through it up until this hill that you run into on this little trail. So Toyota said not to bring some of the Sequoias and Tundras through some of the trails because of the fact that they were very big. So this one can get through it, most of it, because this is a much smaller, more manageable truck. Now this hill right here may not look very steep on camera, but I assure you it's pretty steep. So I'm gonna try to get up it in just two-wheel drive here. It's not gonna make it, I already know that. Yep, it's not gonna make it. So let's put it into 4 high. It's literally just by this little gear lever here. It's a manual style though, because you get that on the Pros. Okay, now it's locked into 4-wheel drive high. Let's get up this hill, see what this thing can do. Just a little bit of throttle, and this is a pretty steep hill. Wow. She made it up with relative ease. And this is probably the kind of off-roading that a lot of owners are gonna do with their 4Runners. I mean, the TRD Pro really offers a lot of capability that most owners are never going to really fully exploit. But it's amazing to me how old this truck is. And she's a mountain goat. She still goes through, you know, off-road trails and takes abuse like a champ, even though this truck is way overdue for a replacement. It could use a camera like you can get on those Jeeps where you can look over the front, because it's a little hard to see over the front in these things. Let's see here, we're gonna go through this area here where you can show off some wheel articulation. You can see the front tire should lift off the ground. Same with the back tire as I go through this course. I'm leaving it in 4-wheel drive high. There we go, the back tire is off the ground. Just give it a little bit of throttle, but it just goes right through it like it's nothing. Yeah, so for a truck that is due for a redesign, the 4Runner very much still impresses on the trails. But let's hop into the Tacoma and see how it feels in relation to this truck. So after just hopping out of the 4Runner, let's now move into the Tacoma TRD Pro. And I'm gonna basically go down the same high-speed dirt off-road course here. And I am noticing immediately that the Tacoma's ride feels a little bit more bumpy than the 4Runner's ride. I'm gonna leave it in two-wheel drive mode here because, I mean, let's face it, this course does not require 4-wheel drive. But I just wanna see how the vehicle handles the bumps, how the suspension handles it, how the chassis feels. Ooh. And let's go through this course one more time and see how this thing feels. Now again, I left it in two-wheel drive. These trucks have a suspension that's been upgraded. It's got the Fox Racing shock, so it can handle these bumps a lot better. And the truck itself feels about the same as driving the 4Runner, but obviously this is longer. You can feel the traction control cutting in, cutting power. Oh, oh, jeez. These Toyota trucks are built like tanks, and some of you may say, oh, you're abusing it, but this thing does not feel like it's hating the abuse. It feels awesome. Getting a little sideways there. I will say that Tacoma feels like it's easier to get this thing sideways a little bit versus the 4Runner because it just has the bed that's empty, so you can easily get it sideways if you'd like. Oh my God, this thing is a ball. Wow, this truck is a goat. She's a mountain lion, just like the 4Runner. Now, one thing I'm noticing also, the engine in this truck, I don't like the sound of it as much as I do in the 4Runner. The 4Runner has more of a meatier, deeper sound, and that's because it's got a half-liter extra in displacement. But let's go down this other trail here and see how the Tacoma does. Now again, I've left it in two-wheel drive the entire time, and we're gonna go down the purple trail here. This is not a very tough trail. It's the same one that I was in the 4Runner in earlier. Now getting over this part is pretty easy. This will do it in just two-wheel drive. But this hill over here, I'm probably gonna have to switch it to four-wheel drive and see how this thing does. Yeah, the ride is definitely a little bit more comfortable in the 4Runner. So yes, I'm not going to make it up this hill, so let's put it into four-wheel drive. While it switches, there we go. And when you put it in four-wheel drive, this thing literally just climbs right up the hill like nothing. You do feel the extra length of the Tacoma here, obviously. This thing is almost 20 inches longer. But it's pretty manageable. This isn't a Tundra, for example. The full-size trucks just get absolutely ridiculous in terms of the size. But yeah, this thing makes it all easy. It's amazing to me how capable these Toyota trucks are off-road. I mean, sure, Jeeps are really great off-road, but you can get a lot with a Toyota, and they're built extremely well. They're durably built. So we'll go through this area over here. We're gonna get two tires off the ground. See how it handles the wheel articulation and the shifting of the power from the side to the side. Okay, I feel some slippage. You definitely notice the 4Runner goes through this a little bit easier. Just the extra length of this truck really makes a difference. But yeah, overall, other than that, they drive pretty similarly, but I do prefer the engine and the extra refinement that you get with the 4Runner. So trying to compare these two trucks is kind of like trying to compare apples to oranges. One is an SUV, while the other one is a real truck with a bed out back. So it's really gonna come down to whether you need the pickup truck capability and the bed versus the SUV capability. And that's gonna come down to more of a personal preference. Now for me, driving these two trucks back to back are remarkably similar. They both handle similarly, they both handle the terrain on this off-road course very well, and getting a chance to drive the two back-to-back on this off-road course that Toyota set up has been a really rare privilege, and it really shows just how capable the TRD Pro models are. These could seriously go head-to-head with any of the best models from Jeep, and they also do it at a much less expensive price versus what Jeep is going to charge for the current top-tier Wrangler. Now, personally for me, I prefer the powertrain in the 4Runner more. I think this powertrain, the 4-liter, feels more torquey off the line. While the 5-speed auto, I don't like the 5-speed. It is a better transmission versus the lazy 6-speed in this truck until Toyota works out the programming, because it still has a tendency to not want to downshift out of its higher gears in order to save gas. So this truck felt faster. This truck to me looks better on the outside and on the inside, and it finally has the modern tech features. Really, what annoys me about the 4Runner is Toyota has not added full LED headlights and blind spot monitoring. That is something that I think Toyota should have added, but remember, Toyota is working on an all-new version of the 4Runner and the Tundra and the Sequoia and maybe even this Tacoma. But for me, if I was gonna spend close to $50,000, because remember, this truck here is $49,800, this truck here is around $46,700. So it's about $3,000 more to go with the 4Runner. And personally, I think the $3,000 is worth that money. But unless you guys really need the truck capability, for me, I would easily spend the money and go with a 4Runner TRD Pro. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this comparison between the two most capable off-road vehicles that you'll find in your local Toyota showroom. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.